Education is what's important. Training, preparation for the expected. Education, preparation for the unexpected.
Good morning, Team Krulak community, and on behalf of Marine Corps University, the Marine Corps University Foundation, and the Krulak Center for Innovation and Future Warfare, welcome back to the Broadcast, our series designed to connect the worlds of the warfighter and PME with the best in innovative and creative thought. I'm your host, Major Ian Brown, Operations Officer at the Krulak Center. Before we begin, please remember that all opinions expressed here are those of the individual and do not necessarily reflect the views of Marine Corps University, the United States Marine Corps, or any other agency of the U.S. government. To today's episode, as we've been announcing in the past episodes and aggressively on our social media, this is the 100th episode of the Broadcast series. It's pretty remarkable that we've kind of made it this far, because it didn't start really as a deliberate effort to create a regular webcasting product. It was sort of a COVID contingency at first, but here we are, 100 episodes, and we've been incredibly fortunate, really fortunate to have the guests and the discussions that we've had here before. So we thought it was appropriate to mark the 100th episode with a special interview here with one of our very own, the director of Team Krulak here at Marine Corps University, Ms. Valerie Jackson. She is in her 5th year as director of the Krulak Center here at Marine Corps University. And before coming to the Krulak Center, she was an arbitrator and nonprofit board member in Dallas, Texas. She also has more than 2 decades of federal service, most of it as a United States Marine herself, in which she currently holds the rank of Brigadier General in the Marine Corps Reserves. She's led and commanded Marines at all levels throughout her career, and has also served as an instructor at the Marine Corps Civil Military Operations School and as a senior editor and field historian for the Marine Corps History Division. And her current reserve billet is down at 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force down at Camp Lejeune. So while she's directing us here, also very busy on the reserve side, keeping an eye towards especially the European theater, where Marines have their own special set of responsibilities. So, ma'am, pleasure to have you here on the program with us. Before we kind of start getting into our retrospective here, happy to have you any opening comments.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Ian. And this is quite an honor for me, and I can't believe I really wanted to have some champagne, but I figure it's a little bit early. But 100 episodes, I never could have imagined that this could have been so successful. But I should have had a better vision, I guess, of what this center can actually do based on what it's done through its past history. And so I thought when you're ready, I could just go through some of the brief history and then talk about some of the highlights for me, and then maybe what I think the center can do in the future, unless you want to kind of let that happen more organically.
I think that'd be a great way to start, ma'am. And in fact, I think talking about your vision for of what this place could be, we can roll right into that. When you first came here, when you were hired, what was your vision? What did you expect, and how has it unfolded?
It's funny because in my interview, I was asked that question, and I want to say it was actually Jay Hatton. Jay, if you're listening, I know you're not on camera, but maybe Curtis, you can tell him. He asked me, "Hey, what do you see in 5 years? What do you see this center being?" And this is really before I knew kind of who I would have on the team. And little did I knew my team would change from year to year. But I said, I see this center as being the mark, the center of excellence of organizations of its type, across DOD. As Marines, the few, the proud, all that, we also like to be the best. That's sort of the unwritten subtext there. And I figured, if we're going to do something, let's do it right and make it a center of excellence across DOD that everyone can look at. What we were actually going to do for me at that point in the interview, I really was unsure. But it wasn't until I got here when I saw who I had, on my team, and sort of what the need was, both from the university's perspective to operationalize the quality enhancement plan, and then, what the schools and programs needed, that I kind of put the mix all together, and we started rolling down the track of creating programs and programming to really get this up and off the ground.
So, ma'am, I think I know there's folks in the audience who, and I'm looking at the list here. There are folks who've sort of, been here if they got in at the ground level, but also
Yeah.
some who may have, sort of found us after a couple of years of operation. So maybe if you could kind of explain, like, so operationalize the QEP, for those in the audience not familiar, what is the QAP? What did that mean to operationalize it? And then how has, how has the center sort of expanded beyond that initial mandate?
You're right. So the quality enhancement plan is what the university, uses as a backstop to underpin all its programming for a period of time to maintain accreditation, so it can give out master's degrees essentially, and still qualify as joint PME. And so for the period of time starting in 2015 for the university, the goal of the university was strengthening leadership through creative problem solving. And so it created the Krulak Center. It's gone through a couple of name changes. In fact, we used to be, when I first took over, the Krulak Center for Innovation and Creativity. Before that, it was the Center for Innovation and Applied Creativity. And there was some back and forth with the acronyms and people saying BK-CAC and BK-KIC. And I didn't like any of that when I got here. So I just kept it Krulak Center. But I instantly knew that we needed a name change, right after I took over. I have my board over here in the office. I, wrote down Krulak Center for Innovation and Future Warfare, and I dated it September 2018. I got here in July of 2018 because I knew, who we had for resources inside the center at the time, and then what the schools and programs needed. It was a lot more tangible than innovation and creativity. And so what I knew I needed to do, based on pretty much from, commander's intent from General Bowers at the time, who was the university president, he said in my in-call with him, hey, get it up and get it relevant. And so that was pretty much my commander's intent. And so, who we had on staff at the time, at first it was just me and one Marine, Rob Arant, now retired. And then we quickly coalesced the University Foundation funded Donald Bren chairs underneath the Krulak Center. And that was, again, the university president's decision to do that. And these were gentlemen that were all subject matter experts in various fields, but weren't getting a lot of play, in the curricula of the university, despite their enormous talent. And so I said, okay, we've got these gentlemen, how do we get them plugged in? And so that was our first sort of line of effort. And then the university president was really hot on writing, getting Marines writing and writing quickly. So we had a writing contest right off the bat. And then we quickly picked up our share of the innovation summit that was later on in the school year. And then we had actually a scholar program start right away, right off the bat. We had an energy chair for that first year, and he got some students involved in studying expeditionary energy, which was exciting for us as well. So that was the first year. And so what we needed to do was show tangible outputs of how we strengthen leadership through creative problem solving. So by creating not only a physical place in the Krulak Center that we're both in right now, we also created a later on, largely virtual due to COVID, but community of interest as well. So where we could have this creative exchange of ideas. We're not a play, for those that don't know, we're not making widgets or solving technical problems here. We're a liberal arts organization, but it is both a place that, again, that is different than the rest of the university, but a place where people can come with their ideas or with programming to get after that creative problem solving idea. You might notice in the people that can see both my wall and Ian's wall here, it's sort of like a light grayish color, and the light colored furniture and his turquoise cube, like all that was completely intentional on my part. I wanted people to even physically feel different because I know that location has and physical surroundings have a great deal to do with the creative process in general. I think if you lived a little bit, you realize that. When you go into a typical military organization, everything's very standardly painted. Well, I wanted this place to physically feel different when people walked in too. So everything we did was very intentional, all with the eye of supporting the goals of the QEP.
Great, thank you, ma'am. And so I think another point you mentioned in there was the changes that have gone on, and I think it's as a center that's always supposed to be forward looking, that does imply change, but there's also been a lot of changes that just were sort of happenstance. You mentioned COVID, but maybe if you could sort of tell the audience like how the center has shifted and changed and flexed over the time that you've been here, because I know that I wasn't here right at the get-go. But the cubicles and everything you just described, that didn't, day one, that wasn't even here. And now that's grown, but, and I think, no 2 years here have been the same, whether it's in structure or mission. So maybe I think, can you lay out some of the changes and the adjustments and the opportunities? Because I think that's part of the great story. What the center has done is that, from those initial bare walls, and very open floor concept, because there were no cubicles or anything else.
Right.
How have we changed and shifted to meet the needs over the years?
Right. So one of the things that I really wanted to ensure that we did was remain flexible to the needs of the schools and programs first and foremost. And then I also started to see, opportunity with the fleet and supporting establishment of, bringing the goodness that we had at the Krulak Center to them. So bringing, PME to them. And the Bren chairs, again, University Foundation funded, they were already doing a lot of this. And so that first year, they were carrying that Krulak Center flag for us, literally around the globe, wherever they went. So sort of raising awareness of not only the Krulak Center, but of MCU as well. And so they would teach, electives at Command Staff College. They would teach periods of instruction inside the different schools and programs, but they were also very active that first year and beyond, doing their own, professional development, programming, all of that. And then we had, I think maybe 3 writing contests. We started the newsletter and then supported the overall university effort of the Innovation Summit that year. The following year is really when you came on board, Ian, and we got, a couple of new staff members. We still had the Bren chairs. I think that's when you first pitched the idea of doing a podcast. And really my philosophy, you call it command philosophy, leadership philosophy, whatever, is standard, whether I'm wearing this or I'm in uniform, and it's equip and empower. I feel like that's my job as a leader. And so with every new crop of people that came to the Krulak Center, and we were fortunate to have the Bren chairs for 2 years, but the Marines, changed out. And, we also very fortunately assimilated Middle East studies that year. And then we've also grown to house wargaming and the Center for Regional Security Studies, the CRIS, the former KAOCL. And let me just talk about that for a second. That was a, again, university seeing that, we need to embrace the warfighting principles of unity of effort and mass. And we have all this goodness, but disparate efforts. Why not, consolidate them in one area, and then we can all sort of push in the same direction. But getting back to equip and empower, I was looking around, and I like to do this, and really employ people in their strengths. So if you have an idea, you wanted to do something, you had, either a writing prompt idea or a project idea, I don't think I said no to one thing that somebody pitched me, because my thought process was, look, I am by far probably the least creative person in this organization. But I am pretty good at identifying people's strengths and supporting them and letting them run. And that's exactly, how we've had the successes we've had over the years. So each year, I sort of did that evaluation. Okay, who do we have on staff? What are we doing? What can we do better? And what was, I don't want to sound silly, but really magical about what happens in this place is literally we'll sit around the table and you have uniformed people, you have PhDs, you have contractors, everybody different experiences, different education levels, different nationalities, whatever. They come in and we'll talk about one central idea, and you get this incredible exchange of information. So creativity, playing out before us, and then innovating new ideas, right? And that is really some of my most gratifying time when we can all sit together and think about how to collectively solve a problem or get after a programming challenge or, provide support to an organization in a way that we haven't before. And this broadcast is probably one of two best examples. You said you wanted to do a podcast, and when COVID hit, we were just getting our lecture series off the ground, and we were having trouble. And that was, and it continues to be one of the challenges, getting groups from across the university all together in one place at one time, because everybody has their own, predetermined schedule and battle rhythm and things like that. So finding that common white space is a challenge. But when COVID forced us online, and this, the stars aligned for you to do your podcast, and for us to start our lecture series, and for us to showcase the talent that we have in the Krulak Center, that checked a bunch of boxes. And, look where we are now, episode 100. And another example of that is Destination Unknown, the graphic novel PME tool, right? I very distinctly remember getting the call from then Major Yang, Adam Yang, and he was a weekend, and he was driving somewhere, and it was, he had a crappy connection, and so I was trying to figure out what he was saying. He was like, I have this idea for a graphic novel. Would you support us at the Krulak Center? And all I could think of was the manga novels that my daughter used to read, and I'm like, I don't like to say no. This is my internal dialogue. I don't like to say no, but I'm having trouble. Like, how do I connect this to war fighting and lethality and, what we do inside PME and Marine Corps University? But the more he talked, and the more I realized that, okay, we've got, the majority of the Marines in the Marine Corps are 25 and younger, and, the age of my daughters, and that's probably the group that we need to get after with this type of product. Then I said, okay, yeah, let's do it. And that thing, now we're about to crowdsource volume 4, right? I don't want to get ahead of the announcement, Ian, but more to come on that. Destination Unknown volume 4 is shortly going to be underway. So really that's what we've done year to year to year. We've done a little bit of roadshow activity. Again, that was hampered by COVID, but I just the virtual platform of being able to touch people literally around the globe with what we do here and get them to interact with us. That's been probably most gratifying.
Great, thank you, ma'am. And yes, more to come on Destination Unknown Volume 4 here in the next couple weeks. So make sure you're following us and or getting on our email distro. But I think that story about then Major Yang is it does sort of encapsulate that haven't said no yet philosophy. And I think I can back that up. I don't think there's been anything that's been sort of just dismissed out of hand, which is kind of remarkable because we brought you some pretty crazy, like, bonkers stuff. And I sometimes sort of expect that, this is going to be the one time we finally sort of pushed it too far. But, it seems to have worked out with episode 100 here and volume 4 DU about to get put together.
I'd like to, if I could, for a second, before you jump to your next one, I want to give a shout out to the university leadership. So not only did they, Dr. Johnson and Mr. Jakes and General Bowers and the vice presidents, they supported me too. When I would ask them for some, hey, can I get non-traditional, paint color? Or, by the way, and I definitely operated on the, it's better to ask or beg forgiveness and ask permission. Like I was doing things over here. So I was sort of left alone. But it was good. So, but I was resourced. I was given some people, I was given a budget, albeit small, but that's all we needed at the time, to kind of do what I needed to do over here. And they just left me alone to do it. And, so that's a good leadership gem too. If you want someone to do something for you, give them the resources and let them go, give them some left and right lateral limits. And then, off we went. So I really, a lot of our early success getting off the ground the way we did and so fast was due to them kind of just letting me run. So I appreciate that. I wanted to give them all a shout out.
Absolutely, ma'am. And that actually feeds very well into the next sort of question point here is that, regardless of the changes, whether it's, structure or where we were physically located, whether we were at home or here during the COVID time, one of the paybacks has been to have an impact, to do something of value to the university. So, over the course of the 5 years here, what are some of the programs that you're most, you've seen as the most impactful and that you think you're sort of most proud of from a, feeding back to the MCU community, the students and faculty here?
This brewcast is definitely one of them. It's hard to measure the impact of Destination Unknown, but I know that thing has enjoyed a great deal of popularity, probably more so outside the university or with our enlisted populations, inside the College of Enlisted Military Education, or MCEA as it's known now. What we've done with the scholar programs, I love that. I love the scholar programs because they're open to all students. So you don't just have, majors or lieutenant colonels or captains, studying one problem, doing a deep dive during their academic year. It's Marines from across the spectrum, civilians too, civilian students. That to me is enormously gratifying. And then to see, university professors that we are supporting that are conducting those scholar programs, whether they're, from in-house here, Ms supporting the Krulak scholars, or Dr. Weber when he did that as our Russia subject matter expert, or, the command and staff college professors, whatever, being able to support people with their ideas and then bringing them here together to physically meet in the Krulak Center. I love that. To hear the exchange, to watch the students grow and really, take advantage of all that this place, and by this place, I mean Marine Corps University, has to offer them during this year where they're in school.
Hey, thank you, ma'am. And I'll throw in from my own sort of personal perspective here is one of the programs, I personally enjoyed the most has been the chance to teach the homegrown elective over at Command and Staff College,
Yes.
which I don't think we've mentioned it yet, but another one of these, I think just kind of letting people run with it is an elective generated by the first operations officer here. I believe he's now Lieutenant Colonel Tim Reeman, if I'm
Yes, he is.
properly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tracks.
And he just came up with this thought of a peer-to-peer taught elective of majors teaching majors, but it's not even, us teaching them. They're teaching each other. It's a very loose framework of an elective where the students are given, they're given sort of the challenge of a what we try and offer, which is something more, intellectually advanced. They pick the readings, they teach each other, and we're just there to kind of, schedule, keep the lights on and make sure that grades get input. But that's been, it's been hugely enjoyable to facilitate, but also I think from the center's point, it's worth a little bit of humble bragging on in that it's been picked up every year that's been offered. And that's not the case with every elective that is pitched there. And that's not to say that, it's better in terms of quality or what have you. It's a challenge because I think the students like to take they take them all if they could, right? But they only get to take a couple. But the fact that we've always met the threshold, I think has been pretty impressive, and it's a testament to you let Tim take something and run with it, and it's paid back to command and staff ever since.
Yeah, for sure. And I know, and it varies each year because of environmental things, whatever. But usually the group continues to meet well after the elective season, which I doubt there are any other electives that have a continuing sort of connection like that. And that to me is, proof positive that is some sort of magic formula right there. that where good ideas come from, and it continues to manifest throughout the academic year, well after elective season is over. So yeah, that was a huge that was a gamble for sure, but it was completely on Tim's shoulders, and he said, hey, let's just see if this works, and hugely successful. And then you've picked up the torch and carried it extremely well ever since. So yeah, that's one of our hallmarks for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Next, to any command staff students listening, help us keep it going here. And
that's right.
Come January 2023.
Get the word out. You'll miss out if you don't sign up.
Talked about the university impact, but I think it's also been pretty remarkable to watch the impact and the outreach and influence the center's been able to have outside of MCU and outside Quantico. And you mentioned, our road shows a little bit, man. We've also done a fair amount of traveling to some other places. Sometimes we sort of have invited ourselves, but other times it's been by request to go do something. So if you want to maybe, hit some of the highlights for how the center's impacted, both whether it's the fleet or even partners and allies outside of Quantico here.
Yeah, I didn't mention, so for those that don't know, I mean, we are a relatively small, organization with, 4 federal workers, federal contract or federal workers, 4 Marines, 1 Army SOF, 5 contractors, and then we have 33 non-resident fellows, but they're not resident with us all the time. But what we have that sort of exemplifies what you're talking about, Ian, is that we have 2 visiting scholars, one from the Swedish Defense University and one from the Norwegian Defense University College. And they have come to us based on, our outward facing programming and our outreach. And wargaming has a great deal to do with that. And now retired Colonel Tim Barrack, who's our wargaming director, and all that he does to bring visibility to what happens at the Krulak Center and at the Marine Corps University, doing, wargaming in any kind of format that you can think of, and then really getting the cloud up and off the ground. I mean, that has brought a lot of visibility to what we're doing. But, we have visiting scholars here, and that to me, is another mark of success. People that wanted to come here and be with us and be among us to further their own research. But, we were invited back in, I guess, late winter to a springtime conference in Sweden, Swedish Defense University, for, essentially a leadership conference for, mid-grade professional officers. It was, co-hosted by the Swedish Defense University and the Finnish Defense University. And next year we hope to go to Finland to see the second iteration of that. We invited ourselves, to a European road trip just prior to COVID. In fact, I think we were in the UK when the first case of COVID hit, and it was a couple in Scotland or something like that. And anyway, so we allies and partners over there, from to Germans to the folks at Sandhurst, at Chaser, Marfor, and we had plans to do that out at Marfor Pack that got squashed by COVID and getting out to 3MEF and all of that. But I think we've been to we've been to 1MEF, we've been to 3MEF individually, I believe, and then we've been to 2MEF pretty often as well. So I don't know. The people keep coming to us, and we keep getting the requests to go out. And again, that to me is extraordinarily gratifying. But the idea is not to be selfish with all the goodness that we have here. And whether it's a wargaming request or a request for pre-deployment training, or it's a request to just to share some of the knowledge that we have here to focus students in a non-resident seminar at Command and Staff College or EWS or whatever it is. We try to get the university and Krulak Center people, out of these 4 walls, where they're needed. So again, I don't like to say no to any of those, and we try to support, anytime we can.
Yes, ma'am. You mentioned our trip to England and COVID. I remember we were just I think that case was in Newcastle, and we were literally 20 clicks down the road from there.
Yep.
You know, we're like, we got to get out of here, and before anybody starts asking questions. No, but I think that you mentioned the pre-deployment stuff. I think it's worth pointing out here as well. One of the benefits of sort of bringing in the former KAOCL, now the Chris under here, is the Major Behrman at the Chris has been like, he does operational culture and pre-deployment stuff for the fleet. You know, that's all him. But now being under here, he's been able to plug into some of the resources we have. Like, for example, you know, meshing wargaming as a pre-deployment thing, or bringing in folks like our regional experts like Dr. Yuval Weber, and now that we have Mr. Dan Rice here as well as our China expert, you know, being able to offer, you know, kind of some advanced pre-deployment training rather than, you know, a few slides or a booklet or something, can bring some real regional expertise to it. So it's one of the benefits of fusing everything over here.
Yeah, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention, you know, when the evacuation of Afghanistan last year, and Operation Allies Welcome and Task Force Quantico that was here just on the other side of the base, where 2nd MLG essentially came up and ran a camp. Camp Upshur turned into, you know, a staging area for Afghan refugees coming in before they could get processed, you know, through to other locations in the United States. You know, Major Behrman supported, and Dr. Tarzi supported big time, Director of Middle East Studies, as essentially the cultural advisor to the commanding general, you know, out there, to ensure that the stay for the Afghans was, you know, as culturally appropriate and sensitive as possible. And that we, you know, their needs were getting met, and, you know, he could literally interpret, you know, what was required out there for the Marines, and make sure that that operation, you know, went as smoothly as possible. And so that was a great deal of personal sacrifice on his part. But I mean, just a great, you know, golden star example of, you know, the kind of support that people in this center provide, you know, the greater Marine Corps.
Absolutely, ma'am. And it's always it's even in those tough situations, it's good to know that, you know, if somebody is, you know, calls up and says, I don't know where else to look for these resources, I need something, you know, pretty much every time we can say, yeah, we can help you, just tell us when and where.
Right.
And go get after it. All right. So we've looked at sort of how we got here, impacts here at the school, impacting out across the fleet and our network across the globe. What are some of the things you want the center to look at in terms of future impacts, you know, with that future warfare piece that's in our title? What's coming next? What do you want us to start getting into in the next couple of years down the road?
Yeah, I think and I know we are, you know, principally unclassified here in the work, you know, that we do. I think there's an ability for greater interaction with the warfighting lab and with MCITIC, as we do the force development side of, you know, the changing nature of the Marine Corps. You know, I want, again, this place, even if you know, we can only assemble a few students at a time, or it's university professors, you know, there's a great deal of knowledge and expertise here at the university that I think could be brought to bear on these conversations that are continuing, you know, as we continue to evolve as a service. And so we can do that to a certain degree at an unclassified level. And I think we could be that interaction, sort of that nexus point for those organizations. And I know we do some of that already, especially on the wargaming side, but I think we could broaden that and really have more of an impact, you know, with those conversations. And that's a focus area for me for this upcoming year, is really widening and deepening those connections, sort of internal with those Quantico organizations that are working on that force development side right now for the Marine Corps.
Great. Thank you, ma'am. And, you know, to those in the audience, again, if there's you see something here down the road that you're looking for some assistance on, and the resources and experts we have here can contribute to, you know, follow us and let us know. We're open on DMs on Twitter and elsewhere, and via email as well. So if you have something you want to look at and tap into us for, we're here. Let us know.
So Ian, before we get into the questions, I want you talked about messaging and all that other kind of stuff. I remember when Tim Riemann started our Twitter page, and and we got up to 500. I think, maybe he called some of his friends to say, hey, today I want to get up to 500, and we needed like 5 more or something like that. And it was a huge celebration, and we have 500 followers on Twitter. So I know I asked you for this number Friday, and hopefully it's grown, but I had 11,000. Oh, I lost it. 11,000 plus now following us in our community of interest, which is absolutely mind-boggling to me, and I know is going to continue to grow. But that is all due to you, principally your efforts, what you do with this broadcast, and what you do for social media for us. So I wanted to make sure that you got the special recognition that you deserve for those efforts, because that's awesome, and that doesn't even capture it. So thanks.
Well, thank you, ma'am. And that makes it easier to explain to my wife back at home why I'm spending all my time on my
Thank you,
iPad.
Bree.
All right, great. So I got a few questions coming in here in the chat here, ma'am. So we'll go to those.
Okay.
Make sure we get the audience stuff. So first one is from Albert Lee, who I know has been a longtime follower and audience member here for the broadcast especially. And he just mentioned that at some point we'd send him a coin back out there in Malaysia. And we're on version 3.0 of the coin now. So I guess we owe you an upgrade. But his question is, so we talked about the broadcast as initially it was a COVID contingency to sort of find a way to stay relevant while we were digital. As things reopened and we went back towards in-person events, I don't know, maybe this is a question for both of us, but what for yourself, ma'am, what sort of niche do you see the broadcast filling from now on? Is it a greater accessibility metric? Is it a is it more than that? Is it a product? Is it a product now? Do we offer products? What do you see it as down the road?
I think one of the greatest things about this is that we record it and post it, and I listen to if I can't tune in, Spotify, when I'm working out or driving or whatever, and I'll catch up on the broadcast. So you can listen to it, the programming, anytime, anywhere. University professors or whomever can assign an episode as homework, and again, it is not just a conversation that takes place at one point in time in a stuffy classroom with people taking notes on pen and paper or on a laptop, and that's where the information stays. It gets captured and broadcast around the world, and so I don't see that changing. If people have specific things they want to talk about, and that's happened before on the broadcast, people that wanted to come on and talk about X, or people that we asked to come on, like the ACMAC and Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, then we give them a platform to talk about what they want to talk about. And I like preserving the space to, talk about anything that's relevant to the Marine Corps. And we've done that, talking about, the Women's Initiative Team, to military history, to drones, and adult learning methodology, and like everything in between. And I want to preserve that because I think that's where sometimes the conversation is lacking. There aren't a lot of places centered around the Marine Corps, or even the other services for that matter, where you can have that type of discussion.
Great, thank you, ma'am. And it feeds well into our next question here from Nayla Mengel, who, again, another longtime follower, audience member of the broadcast. And she has a position over at the National Museum of the Marine Corps, who, as a docent, and I know that we've had a lot of actually some really great contributions.
Great support from them and the Heritage Foundation. I should have mentioned that up front. In addition to the University Foundation, they have been huge supporters of ours. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so her question again, this is to kind of both of us, but who would be the dream guest for us to get on the broadcast here in the future? I have a couple of my own I can mention, but ma'am, who would your dream guest be?
Go ahead, Ian. You go first.
Okay. Well, I know when I first pitched this, I think I made you a promise to get Bill.
Oh, I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
Yes, I promised to get Bill Belichick on here, and I have failed to do that so far. Maybe I can pull that together here in my remaining time. Hopefully after the playoff season, because I want him to be busy come come December and January. In Zappy, we trust. But I think I guess also I never expected we would ever have access to folks like the assistant commandant of the Marine Corps and the sergeant major of the Marine Corps when this first started. So I feel like if we could get General Berger on, sir, I know your staff knows we exist. The door's always open, and that would be great to kind of like complete the set there in terms of having some of those, top senior leadership access, sending their message directly out to our audience on there. But so yeah, it's funny. I think that the commandant's more achievable than Bill Belichick. But ma'am, who would yours be?
Yeah, I think the commandant would be amenable to it. I don't want to speak for you, sir, but should your schedule allow that, we would love to have you on. I would love to have General Krulak on. He's been obviously a huge supporter of the center named for his father. Much of it is behind the scenes, but I would like to give him the opportunity to come on and be interviewed by you, Ian, because I think that would be sort of the icing on the cake for the next best thing to having General Brute Krulak on here to talk about what the center has done and what it means to him and to his legacy. And I would love for him to come on, and I will work on inviting him this year to do that. Along the Belichick theme, I would love to have Tom Brady on, and my husband may or may not hear this episode, but he knows that I am a longtime fan of Tom Brady, and not for some reasons that people might think, but I honestly think, and I know he's the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. But to have such a sustained level of high performance over a career that should have ended a long time ago, there's some sort of magic formula in that guy's head or psyche or whatever. And I would love to, I'd love to try to get inside that and hear from him and see what the applications might be, across into the Marine Corps and how we are as professionals too.
All right, ma'am. So Tom Brady and Bill Belichick.
Yep.
No problem. I'll send out the invites. And
Patriots Nation, if you're listening.
They're going to get tagged when I post this.
Oh, good.
And yeah, I'm sure they'll be knocking on the door as soon as they hear.
Awesome.
All right. So going a couple more questions in the chat here. And they're sort of related, so I'll stitch them together. And from Lieutenant Colonel Curtis Kobeck, who was our, I guess he's still honorary Team Krulak, although he's moved over to VPAA now to assume, important duties over there as well. And then another from Albert Lee to sort of tie it up. So I guess down the road, specific things that the community can look forward to. We could put this at the end, sort of through this academic year, and then moving beyond that academic year. Are there a specific priority or a couple of priorities for public outreach that you would like the center to work on, kind of summer 2023 and onward?
So let me start with that one. I really want to leverage having Nord from Norway and Henrik from Sweden here, and as we NATO assesses Finland and Sweden into the organization, what does that mean for NATO? What does that mean, for the Marine Corps? And I like the fact, we all recognize the pacing threat that our service is aligned against, and that's China, and everybody's Indo-PACOM focused, but not everybody. So 2MEF is not. You mentioned that's my reserve home right now, and there is a lot of good work and support going on to that theater that is doesn't always make the press, and also there are Marines doing great work in Southcom as well, and Marines in CENTCOM. So all that continues. So I like highlighting and focusing that to, first of all, bring notice to those folks, and second of all, to reassure and support the notion of the commandant's posture statement saying that, hey, what we're doing for force design is still applicable in other theaters. And I think especially the Marines in 2MEF have played that out, over the past several months, especially. So I like highlighting that. I would like to continue highlighting that. because the Corps is doing a great job, and the focus for 1 and 3 MEF out there at Indo-PACOM. So maybe it's a little bit of bias, I don't know, but I want to focus on all of the efforts of the Corps outside of Indo-PACOM as well, because that gets a lot of attention. I'm also really excited again, Destination Unknown version 4. The methodology for that is a little bit different, and I'll let you talk about that a little bit more for this coming year. And then some of it I want to leave a mystery, the big question mark, because anytime, and this happens every June when we try to do our budget, right? We try to project, what are we going to do this academic year? And we have ideas and things that we'd like to do and support, but every single year without fail, that changes. And there's always something big, in the third quarter, usually, that comes up that we know we need to support or want to support, and that it's something that's totally unforecasted. So by remaining sort of on the balls of our feet, we're able to do that. And so if we were not an organization that could do that, we might have to consider another name change.
Yes, ma'am. And I'll take a couple of seconds if you want to talk about the new approach for Destination Unknown Volume 4. So for the past issues, it's been how do I put it, sort of maybe a more artisanal approach, if you will, where we sort of very deliberately selected or reached out to garner interest for people who wanted to do contributions. And in some cases that was just, there's a timeline and we had to use the people who we could reach out and grab. So I think for Major Yang and Major Austin Duncan, who was another one of the plank holders of the Destination Unknown series, that was them. They pitched you the idea and then they had to go execute. So, to get it to happen on a reasonable timeline, it was a lot of, I know you, I'm going to grab you. Do you want to write a story kind of thing? Again, Tim Riemann, he was here, he contributed a story. So that was, that's sort of easier to control your own destiny. But from each episode on, we've tried to expand the aperture for who the contributors are. So volumes 2 and 3, we had, joint service contributors, Army, Air Force, Navy, even entry-level folks. Volume 3, we had Air Force Academy, we had Naval Academy. But again, those were all sort of like by invitation, reaching out to a fellow or some other contact to sort of not voluntold, but a crafted invite to get them in here. For Volume 4, we're going full 21st century, digital democratic approach of crowdsourcing. So for those listening, we mentioned the announcement's going to be coming, but this is the first one where we are going to extend an open invitation for contributions. And that is not just around the fleet. That is, if you want to send in a story with artwork, it's going to be open outside the Marine Corps as well. It's truly crowdsourced. This is send us your best, and we don't know who it's going to be. I'm certainly not planning. I'm not planning on extending specific invitations. We're going to see what we get, and so this is a very, very unique opportunity to really our whole perspective of we want diverse and varied inputs, because that helps us think better. That gives us more data points. We're throwing the doors open now to the world. Literally, give us your best vision of what some future conflict might look like, and we'll have a specific writing prompt to help with that. But we're going to crowdsource it, and we're very excited to see what comes back, because we've seen the talent we've gotten when we've sort of invited folks in. It's going to be amazing to see what we get, just extending it to truly global talent.
And so, and I saw the comment by Albert Lee just now too. And so, hey, if you want to write and get someone else to illustrate, and you win, you place and you get your story in the volume, and you get prize money, then you just have to split the prize money. That's all. And there's going to be big money for this one. Again, supported by the University Foundation for what it does for PME, for Marines and the Marine Corps, and the University Press. That we couldn't do this without them. So we're grateful for our partners in this venture.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. They've been a huge part of supporting this from day one as well. And to Albert's point, I hear you, because I can't draw either. But that this is why it's a team effort. I think we've only had one story, maybe one or two, that were written and illustrated by the same person. Everything else has been a team effort. So go find yourself an artist, right? You provide the text and the idea. Go find someone to draw it for you. And I can speak from experience where it's been amazing to take like just words and some basic descriptions and give it to an artist and see what they make of it, and they will show you things that you never thought you would imagine, how your words could be brought to life. So hey, it's okay, just write it out and go find yourself a good artist to bring it to life. I got, I think, one more question here, and then if we don't have anything else, ma'am, we'll wrap it up after that. But so Cat Matthew Ward, also one of our residents here, we're not residents but part of the MCU team, noting that on the Brewcast, we've had, Deputy Commandant, we've had senior commanders, enlisted advisors. For those senior commanders, I think we should note that among those, the non-Indo-PACOM focus, we had Lieutenant General Bellin and we had Major General Donovan specifically to talk about, Southcom and UCOM and what the Marines are doing in those areas, which has been, fantastic to share those perspectives as well. Do you recall, was there a certain guest or episode or theme, though, in the past where it looked like the Brewcast sort of finally hit critical mass and was taken off?
That might be better for you to talk about, although I will say a year ago when you talked to Dr. Tarzi, about the Afghan withdrawal and the things going on in the Middle East, again, as our attention has been pulled or focused, rightfully so, again, on the pacing challenge, and then, continuing to pull us back to, where Marines are fighting or what significant world events are, so maybe the ones last summer, I think you did a couple, and I can't remember them off the top of my head, but for me, that was, and I remember, again, I was listening, I think I was doing yard work, you had just recorded it, or whatever it was. And it really hit me like, holy crap, this is an organization. This is an event. This is a format where we can talk about, real world impact, not just sort of, the intangible ephemera of academia sometimes, like this is 100% for real. And then what you and Yuval have done with Down the Rabbit Hole, talking about Ukraine, that to me, again, enormously gratifying, because, we talk about a lot at the university about, things that happened in the past, and maybe, what we need to prepare for in the future, but talking about, current world events, and the import of this platform really kind of came home to roost for me, like last August probably, and then reinforcing fires, excuse the pun, in February with Mr. Putin's war in Ukraine. How about you?
So as you know, ma'am, I watch metrics very closely, and that maybe that's not the right answer, but
you're going to let the numbers tell you when it was most important.
Well, so they're actually two. One kind of covers the rabbit hole you just mentioned, ma'am, but the other one was, I do remember the first episode that cracked 1,000 views on the YouTube channel, and that was the late Art Corbett's look at military innovation.
Yeah.
The innovator's dilemma, and we didn't know it at the time, but that was one of the last, if not the last, sort of public time he gave that lecture.
Yeah.
And I think it was 2 weeks later he was just gone, and it was shocking. But that one, aside from the fact that it was shocking to look at, we just, he looked so well, and he was so, still so like full of energy the way he is when he talks. And he's just like, it's all in his brain, all of that stuff. I felt very fortunate that we were able to capture that at the time, but I also thought it was appropriate that the first one to crack 1,000 was him. Yeah. Because, anyone who's listening, if you haven't watched or listened to it, go back and do it, because it's very much a look at, it's the challenges the Marine Corps is going through today in terms of reorganizing and reforming itself. How do we do that? How do we maintain core capabilities while changing a lot of our stuff to deal with future challenges? But it's also just a good look at, how an organization can either stay vibrant and relevant or not, or stagnate. And he talks about the difference between Netflix and Blockbuster, right? Innovation and adaptation isn't just a military thing. It's a thing out there in the real world too. So that was a fantastic episode, and it was definitely one that deserved to crack 1,000 views first. But then I'll also note on the rabbit hole side, this is where I stop understanding what the internet does and why it does it. 'Cause I couldn't explain it. I was just happy that it did. But there was one episode of The Rabbit Hole, and I think it was like number 7 or 8, where within 24 hours it had like plowed through 3,000 views, and this was unprecedented to any episode we'd ever done. And I couldn't explain it. At first I was like, are we just getting pushed by bots out there doing it? But
Ukrainian bots.
yeah, Ukrainian, whoever it was, I'm like, I didn't believe it at first because it was so different from any of the other episodes we've done in terms of both the numbers and how quickly we got up there. But as the Rabbit Hole series has gone on, I don't think we've had one that's quite gotten up there, but we've had a lot that have gotten close, and those are consistently the most watched and most listened to things we do. And so it's I think Yuval and I kind of share the same opinion. We wish we didn't have to do it, but we're fortunate to have access to someone like Dr. Weber. So long as we do have to do it, we have access to someone who can provide real time and insights in the native language and native thought processes of the people who undertook the war to help us understand it. So I still don't fully know how we got all those views, but it was it meant people were watching and listening, and they found it relevant enough to listen to. And I'll put a plug in for him again as well from some of the post-school surveys we've gotten. The Down the Rabbit Hole series has been consistently gotten like top marks and great feedback. And we're fortunate we had someone like him, in place at the right time when we needed him to give us the students and then our wider community the insights that we needed when we needed them.
Yeah, and again, and I'll bring this right back around to maybe it's another good leadership lesson because especially in the DoD or the military, I mean, you very rarely. Well, especially if it's mostly, government or uniform, you don't always get to pick your team. And, very few people, have we gotten here that it's, hand selected. Mostly it's like, okay, hey, I'd like to come and sure, that'd be great. And let's see how the cards fall. And then they're hired or they get orders here or whatever. And you're a prime example. Like, what a long shot to try to get you here, as an aviator, and whatever sort of dark arts needed to happen over there in the Marsh Center with your monitor to get you to come here. What a godsend for sure to have you here at the Krulak Center. But the contractors and the Bren chairs, like all of that, it's just been amazing to watch people. It's literally been a stone soup situation. What do you have to offer to the center? And everyone's bringing their thing. And before you know it, you have this amazing, tasty stew. But I think, the director previous to me was Dr. Jeb Nadana. And before he left, he said to me, it's amazing what we've done here in the last year, where you bring people with all these different expertise areas. And they've created this beautiful, beautiful symphony. And so alone, the trumpet sounds okay, and you can play a certain sound, and the clarinet and the snare drum or whatever. You bring that together with the strings and all the other instruments that everyone brings and focuses again in this one center, this one area, and we have just created some beautiful music. And so I might be the conductor, Ian, but but your first chair violin, if anyone knows music, that's pretty important. So anyway, I know that wasn't that wasn't on the line of questioning, but it just highlighted again to me, how lucky and fortunate I've been to have such an amazing team.
Well, great. Thank you, ma'am. And I think that's a good note to wrap things up on here as we're coming up to about an hour. So any final thoughts or previews you'd like to share with the audience before we end it today?
Final thoughts or previews that we haven't talked about. Stay tuned. This year is again, underway. We have our incredible scholar programs that are going on. We have the Reynolds Scholars, looking at issues of WPS, and the Krulak Scholars headed by our Ms team, looking at, energy focus through CENTCOM and UCOM. areas especially. And then we have our Ellis Fellows and looking at how smaller powers, can overcome larger powers in warfare and all the things that go into that. And I want to see what those student outputs are for the year. And then, Colonel Tim Barrack is doing just amazing work with wargaming and, working a lot of extra hours and nonstop to support this week and last, the joint staff and, everybody in between and students first and foremost throughout the schools and programs. All to say, it's an exciting year with a small staff, but come next summer, we're going to lose a bunch of folks, and so we're going to look different, and so we're going to have to reinvent ourselves again. And so while that to me is personally very daunting and sad in many respects, I know it's going to be an incredible challenge. And like a phoenix rising from the ashes, the Krulak Center will be, once again recreated. So I look forward to executing our incredible programs this year, and then what's to come in the years to follow. So, thanks, Ian. Thanks for your professionalism in the way you've executed the Brewcast for these 100 episodes, and I look forward to the next 100. You got short time to make it happen before you fade away.
Yes, that's all right, ma'am. I'll sleep at some point, in 2024. Make sure we get those next 100 out. So I guess we'll ending with that, but also we can note that episode 101 is already scheduled and in the shoot. So for those in our audience who want to join us this Thursday afternoon, kind of going back to General Jackson's point about our Quantico agencies and helping future impact of the Marine Corps, we're going to have Marines from the Weapons Training Battalion Quantico, just across the highway from us here, who are going to talk about a lot of the changes that have been going on to the annual rifle qualification and the combat marksmanship that, we as Marines, every Marine a rifleman, right? That's the ethos. Well, how does that get executed in a 21st century, battlefield? How do we make the 21st century marksman? So they're going to tell us how. So they're going to talk to us about the Advanced Marksmanship Training Program and Infantry Marksmanship Assessment as part of building a lighter, more lethal, more commando type force under Force Design 2030. And this feeds well back into some of the episodes we started out this season with, which, talking to the assistant commandant and talking to Sergeant Major and General Donovan and those folks, there's a lot of change going on. And, the concepts are all well and good. How does it impact, the Marine on the battlefield holding their weapon, right? That's what we're going to talk about, because this all has a practical application. So we hope if you haven't registered already, please join us for that. And as well as for future episodes, because I've apparently got 99 more I got to schedule here before I punch out of here next summer. All right. Well, man, thank you very much for your time. Couldn't have asked for a more suitable guest for our 100th episode today. And now I got to figure out who we talk to for episode 200 once we get there. And
right.
to our audience, thank you as well for joining us this morning. And we'll have this posted here shortly for the rest of the community. So again, thank you all, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, everybody.
Education is what's important. Training, preparation for the expected. Education, preparation for the unexpected.